yeah, it's me again, Mila. Uh, yeah, wearing the exact same thing I was 2 minutes ago when I stopped the last video. And starting over with a fresh timer. And, yeah, so... Yeah, my first thought when I stopped the last video was that I would start talking more about the all the legislation that's being thrown around the country, around the U.S., and how it is scaring the absolute shit out of me. And I don't mean this jokingly. I mean this in the most serious way possible. If you've been paying attention, I mean, it's been all over the news for like last couple of months now. You know, the focus on banning any kind of gender affirming care for minors. You know, anyone under age 18. Okay, so that's one thing, and that does tend to be a lot more divisive because people argue that if you're under 18, you lack the mental capacity to think for yourself. You know, so apparently 17-year-olds can't decide what what their future is going to be. So by that logic, why do we have why are they picking colleges? Why are they entering the military? You know, signing up early for the armed services, and you know, I don't know. It's just that whole hard deadline. You know, that hard division between 17, you're too stupid to know what the fuck you're doing, and 18, okay, all of a sudden you know everything about yourself. Okay, so I'm not really going to get into that at this point because it's very divisive, I'm finding, and brings out a lot of hatred toward us. What I am more concerned about at this point in time, what I am more concerned about at this point is that the states that have already passed these youth trans care laws, bans, they're already gearing up for the adult crowd now. I mean, the only one I can think of specifically is Oklahoma, with their proposal to outlaw, and yes, I mean completely outlaw, insurance companies from covering any transgender related care, regardless of your age. It's already passed, I think it was their House, already passed it. So now it's going to go, I believe, to their Senate or whatever state level it is, and then to the governor, who's they've already shown their hand and what they think of us. So basically, it's going to be impossible for most transgender people in Oklahoma to continue on being. So, and what's going to happen there is, it's that same effect that, okay, well, your neighbor does something, so you do something, but then you got to take it a step further, and it's going to happen where, okay, next up it'll be probably Kansas, and then South Dakota will probably step up their ban. I'm sure Texas will probably get involved, Florida, just all these states have already enacted bans, on the minors, are now going to start looking at what Oklahoma's doing and go, okay, that was a good idea. And they're going to start doing the same thing. It's going to be, okay, we'll outlaw insurance companies from covering any services related to trans health. And then it'll be, we will prohibit doctors from working on trans-related health care, and it's just gonna, it's gonna escalate from there, because the conservatives, they don't care, they don't care about us, they, and I mean, full disclosure here, I used to identify as conservative, but since I came to terms with myself and who I really am, and I saw that, we are completely incompatible with our ideologies, because they take this whole thing with, they got pushed to religion, which also, and again, full disclosure, I am Christian, but I do take exception to a lot of things that are mentioned that they like to cherry pick and twist and distort as basis for for saying that people like me shouldn't exist, and I just don't look at, like, there's so little, no, I'm sorry, I was on the road there and I just kind of veered off into a tree. But anyway, I just look at what all these red states are doing, and I'm scared to death, because other states are going to be emboldened by what one does, and they'll take it a step further, and the next one a step further beyond that, and next thing you know, we're going to have 35 states with full transgender bans, if not making it a crime to be transgender. I mean, sure, you got your West Coast states, and a handful of East Coast states are safe for the time being, plus Minnesota and Illinois. But what happens when a Republican president sits in the White House? I mean, we already have that psychotic asshole Trump trying to say that he wants to push through executive order to prohibit us from existing. Okay, he didn't use those exact words, but he said in no uncertain terms that he would push for a ban on all transgender care for all ages on his first day in office, quote unquote, when I get elected. Yeah, well, fuck you, Trump. God damn. Yeah, I really didn't mean to go off on a tangent like that, but if you could see the world through our lens, I think you'd understand more. I think you'd understand that the whole thing is that we're just trying to live our lives. I mean, it's not like I just consciously made a choice one morning that, hey, I want to be different. I want to be, part of a marginalized group. I want to be, I want to be stuck on hormones for the rest of my life. Because, just because, oh, that would be fun. No. This was not just some flash in the pan curiosity of mine. I've dealt with this personally for, oh God, how many decades has it been now? I mean, okay, and this here is the part that I actually wanted to talk about when I was considering how the second part of my uploads today was going to go. My thought, was to talk about my history with being trans, and the path I had to follow to get here. But I can't even really give you a proper start point because, well, my memories are well, they're virtually non-existent prior to a certain age. I mean, yeah, I remember like isolated, like what do you want to call them, like still frames of my life from when I was younger into my early and mid-teens, but I could not tell you, you know, a dozen memories from when I was 12 years old. I couldn't tell you, 5 memories from when I was 13 years old. I couldn't tell you, you know, a dozen memories from when I was 14 years old, or 8, 9, 10 years old. I couldn't tell you more than maybe 3 or 4 memories from those days. It was only after I turned 16, back in 1998, in 97 into 98, that I started to actually consistently remember things from my past. So, I can't really, speak for how I felt, as far as my identity back then beforehand. But I can tell you that from the time that I was in my late teens, I knew something was up. I didn't have the same leanings as my contemporaries in school, my classmates. Especially the male classmates. I mean, I never connected with any of them as far as being close friends or anything. But yeah, it was over the years that followed, in my late teens. Basically, when I was 18 and I moved out on my own, and I finally started to be able to branch out and really experience life outside of that redneck Northwoods hillbilly shithole that I grew up in. I began to understand who I was. I mean, at the time, I didn't have words for it, but I knew that, as I started to explore certain interests, not related to sex, okay, just full disclosure there. But I just started to branch out and understand that I preferred certain things that were outside of the norm. And over the following years, I began to realize and understand that I was feeling more comfortable when I was able to skew my presentation more toward the feminine. But I had to keep that a secret because this was the early 2000s, and back in those days, it was not accepted, to any degree, to be anything other than a cisgendered straight person. And if you're anything else, well, you were a freak, and you would be you'd be asking for trouble. So I kept it hidden. I kept it in my bedroom only when my roommate wasn't around. So kept that going for a couple of years, actually. And then what was it? Back in 2005, I found myself in my first serious relationship. I moved away from my apartment, and that was at the time. Moved in with my first serious girlfriend, and I tried to come out to her as to show her that there was another side to me that was not the usual you know usual straight male guy's guy or whatever. I was trying to be that, but as soon as she saw my other side, she shut that down right away and told me to never do it again. So I put all that shit away and got rid of it. Suffered silently for the next 4 years because I wanted to keep that relationship going. In retrospect, that was a huge mistake keeping that relationship going, but that'll be a story for another time. Yeah, so we broke up. Well, actually, she vanished from my life one day, and we never spoke again after that. But that's part of the story for later, I guess. But anyway, this is like 2009. I started to stop repressing myself again, and I began to start to feel more comfortable, and I began to express myself in a more feminine fashion, and this is just a thing that over the years I would start expressing myself more effeminate, and I'd feel better about myself for a while, but then something outside of my life, from another source would come into my life, and then they would force me to shut down that part of me in an effort to appease the other party. I mean, it could be it was relationships, it was family, it was roommates. I went through that at least 4 times, and the longer I suppressed it, the worse that I got. So it finally got to its worst point in about the point where I moved in with my parents following some... Oh, God, my nose itches. Sorry. Following some unfortunate circumstances that arose from my situation in 2016 when the money ran out and I was unemployed. I had to move back in with my parents for a while. That turned out to be 2.5 years. So I kept that side of me completely stored away for those 2.5 years, and it was killing me inside. I mean, I won't deny that I was having a real hard time with it. So, and it was probably that was the biggest factor that led me here. I mean, this condo that I'm living in right now, because finally I had accumulated enough money that I could buy, at least put a down payment on a house. So I went, hit the real estate market and found this condo because I had to get out of my parents' house. It didn't matter that I was saving all kinds of money. The fact of the matter was that my female side was being so suppressed, repressed, whatever. It was suffocating, and it was causing me mental anguish because I had to let her out, and I had no outlet for that because my parents were always around. So I moved out, bought this condo, and things began to get better for me after I moved here. At least until my dad died the following spring. So that was a real shitty setback there. But anyway, so I kind of got, knocked around on that emotionally for a while. But at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit here, but when I reached that point, I was still having a hard time finding the opportunities to present myself as my feminine side. And during those times, my feminine side was known as Selena. The name was actually suggested to me back in 2014 when I was getting started in the fetish modeling scene. And it was just suggested to me as a name, and I was like, okay, I like that name. And there was a history with that name that I liked because it was also the name of the secret identity of Catwoman, Selena Kyle. And Catwoman is known for her cat suits, which was a big fetish of mine at the time. So I used that name for a few years because of that. But anyway, that's another thing for another time. But anyway, so at the end of 2020, start of 2021, my mind was breaking. I mean, my mind was literally fracturing in two between my male persona, which was taking care of all the public interactions with, with going to work, with, visiting family and whatnot. And then on the other side, there was Selena, and she was basically my fun side, trying to manifest and and remind me that there was a feminine side to me that I was neglecting because I was so focused on being the male side, and things were not going well. Basically, Selena was pissed, and yes, I'm referring to myself in the third person here. Just from the fact that I really was becoming two different people. Simultaneously, there was my old self. We'll call him, we'll just call him Matt because that was my name. So Matt was the male persona. Selena was a female persona, and Selena was pissed because Matt was was using this body most of the time, and she was just kind of stuck in the background, not being able to do anything. And over time, on my days off, I was having a lot of interactions with people online, mainly men with shady motivations. And she was basically putting me into a position where my personal safety was at risk. I was receiving messages, demands actually, that I provide my home address for these gentlemen callers, if you will. And she really had no issue with whatever might happen as a result of that. And Matt, he was just so tired from fighting all the time that he finally just gave up and said, just basically, it was like, okay, do what you want. I'm too tired to fight. And that was the point that I realized that I had to make the call. I had to start. I had to start transition because I think I realized that was the primary motivator, you know, behind so much of what I was doing was I just needed, you know, I needed to reconcile the two personas back into one, and that was something that I only achieved later on that spring or early summer, as it was, when I finally got started on my transition, the medical care, and I don't know, maybe that whole thing didn't really make sense as I was explaining it, but I hope it did. But yeah, so it was when I started on my hormone therapy that I began to feel, that Matt and Selena were finally, like, for lack of better terms, merging back into one, and basically that resulted in the person that you see here. That's how Mila has come to be. She, me being she, she is the acute. God damn, I can't say. I can't speak English. No English, I guess. But yeah, she's the combination of the two personas I had working together in tandem as a single unit, finally, after so many years of fighting back and forth. So that's my story. That's the I don't want to say the short version of it, but that is how how my journey has gone. Kind of briefly, as from being a very awkward and shy teenage boy, or so I thought, to the transgender woman that is working to emerge now. And yeah, I know I'm still working on earning that the right to refer to myself as such, but I hope I'm getting there. I'm not exactly brimming with self-confidence, as you may or may not have noticed. But I'm working on the transition, hoping that I can continue it, because I'm at the point right now where if I stopped taking my hormones, the results would be disastrous. I mean, not just from a mental health standpoint, but physically. Because anytime that you have to stop hormone therapy abruptly, like some of the states are going to require of the trans patients, the shock to the body is it's no small thing. It's all of a sudden you don't have essential hormones running through your body, and the old hormones are being produced. They take a long time to catch up and start producing again. So you're going to have a lot of health problems related to that. My understanding is that your bone density suffers greatly from it, among other things. So, and we can't even begin to speculate on the mental and emotional impact of that, because getting on hormone therapy does do a lot to calm the mind and stabilize it. But again, the conservative politicians, they don't see this, because they don't even talk to us. They just go, ooh, trans bad, trans bad, trans bad. Yeah. So, what do you do? I know this one's probably not going to be a very popular video. I mean, not that any of mine ever are, but I just I want to talk about my own, you know, a brief condensed version of my history with being trans, and you know, understanding that it is a long journey for most all of us. You know, we don't just wake up one day and decide that, oh yeah, I want to be different. You know, it's a thing that we realize over time. For my part, I knew when I was a teenager, but I did not have the vocabulary. I didn't have the support to help me understand that that's what I was. You know, back then, all I had were a couple of self-identified clues, and that I figured out, you know, 2 decades later. And had I known early on, you know, could I have done anything about it? Probably not until after I moved out, but I could have started saving money for, you know, for treatments and for you know, for the process. But instead, I had to wait almost a quarter decade to finally get on an insurance plan that covered it. It covers a lot of my healthcare costs. Not all of them, you know, just so you're aware. My health insurance does not cover what they consider cosmetic procedures. So any kind of the facial feminization surgeries or anything like that, you know, that's on me. That's, you know, $15,000-$20,000 out of pocket, which I don't have. So, but I am lucky in that, you know, I've got a very affordable health insurance plan through work. They cover 80% of my costs, and they cover my blood tests. I had a blood draw done last Friday. They cover my, you know, my physician visits and my social worker visits, which I actually get to talk to both of them tomorrow. So looking forward to that in a way, but also kind of not, because, you know, I got a lot on my mind about everything right now, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep it all straight tomorrow, even if I write it down. So I don't know. I'm at a loss for everything right now, just because of, you know, the outside world. So if I could have been born normal, you know, I would be, but you know, it's not like I just woke up one day and decided that I wanted to be a freak. I just realized after so many years that I just had to stop lying to myself. It took me a better part of 20 years before I realized that trans was, you know, was what I was, what I am. But the powers that be don't give a shit. You know, they think that it's just a conscious choice, something that we can just will ourselves out of. guess we don't know ourselves well enough after decades of living in our own bodies, fighting our own battles, denying ourselves who we really are because, we're fucking terrified of what family, friends, and people around us are going to think. So, anyway, I know I'm just playing the poor pity me card right now, but I hope some of this made sense. Because I don't have any answers. All I know is that I'm scared shitless, and I feel like the mob against us is growing larger every day, and that they want nothing more than to erase our existence because we're somehow lesser humans because we're different. Maybe I am. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't exist.